And
I can see it.
And here we are live with Mr. John Fleming.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, this is so awesome to have you on here. I am shocked that you said yes, shocked and delighted. I don't think I've seen you. I've seen your wife more than I've seen you, I think, in person.
Yeah,
right?
It's been a while, Lisa. That's for sure. Time flies. But you shouldn't have been shocked because I just said this before we went live. But for me, it's an honor. It's a pleasure to be with Lisa Wilbur. You are a legend. So it's good to spend my afternoon with you, or the beginning of
it. Well, I really appreciate that. And, some of the things I'm going to mention here and there, some of the things I'll never forget you said. That's I think, the thing about you is you say stuff that has such impact for years, and I'm not sure that you realize. Do you remember one time we were at a meeting? I was not in the top people. I was just a leadership representative, so it was early on. And the leadership person that was number one was picking on me at the meeting for some reason. She didn't like me doing newsletters or something. I forgot what it was. And you looked at me and you said, "Never apologize for thinking like an entrepreneur." And you actually gave her the business a little bit for picking on me. But the fact that you said that to me, you know what I mean? I remember it to this day. And I always think, I'm never going to apologize for that again, ever. But just think, you said that one thing, and that meant so much to me all this time later.
Well, that's good to hear. And I will say this, in addition to what you just said, I heard about you before I ever had the opportunity to meet you. And so you were becoming known through your work. And I remember looking at pictures of the crazy cars with Avon all over it. And you were doing newsletters and you were offering to go out and speak to other groups, I think whether they were in your downline or not. Yeah. And as I observed that, I always recognized you as being a very astute personal marketer. Now, I said this to you once in a communication some time ago, I think, and your personal marketing was just brilliant. And the wrap on the car, what a great way to advertise. No one else had ever thought about doing anything like that. And then to do newsletters, to stay in touch with people, and then to be out amongst people. And now to do what you're doing in this show, this stuff is not easy to do, but you make it easy by virtue of the way you handle it, because you're always authentic, you're having fun, you're laughing, but you're also very smart, Lisa. So you're a great personal marketer. I always recognize that. So,
well, you know what? I'd have asked you on sooner if I knew you were going to say all this fabulous stuff. I can't get enough of that always. I was reading a whole bunch about you when I was preparing for the show, because I like to do that. There was a lot of things that I didn't know about you. I thought I actually knew I knew about the architect thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I did not know that you were friends with Arthur Ashe.
Oh, yeah.
How did I miss that?
It's not something that I talked about a lot, but yes, that's in my background.
Because do you mind sharing the story about how you came into direct sales? Because I think that is very, very interesting.
For some of the people who may not know who Arthur Ashe was, would you mind if I just clarify that?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Arthur and I grew up in Richmond, Virginia. And during those days, tennis was not the favorite sport of kids like myself, but Arthur lived right next to tennis courts because his father was the superintendent of parks. And so he learned to play tennis at a very early age. He probably could beat all of us left-handed, and he was a right-handed player. And then when we got to high school, the competition was limited for Arthur. And so a good friend of the family moved him to Lynchburg, Virginia, where he got formal coaching. And then he never came back to our high school. He went to St. Louis to live with another family because they had indoor courts in St. Louis where African Americans, by the way, could play. And that would not have been possible in Richmond. And then that's when the story begins. He started to get into all kinds of tournaments, ended up getting a scholarship to UCLA, and then later Davis Cup team, and later he won Wilmington. So he's one of our most outstanding tennis players ever. And this is a guy that I grew up with, and all we wanted to do was play baseball, play a little bit of tennis, go to the swimming pool. But he was also a very smart guy and went on to make some very significant contributions to life, not only sports, but to life in general. So I am happy that I can say he was my friend. In my office here, I have a newspaper article blown up in a frame, a picture of Arthur. So you touch my heart when you mention Arthur Ashe. So I just wanted to clarify who he was.
Now, in the story I read, you were listening to Wimbledon on the radio when he was about to win, and you pulled over.
Oh my goodness, you did.
Isn't it? Oh, the hairs just went up on my neck. How exciting. You must have been thrilled for him.
I was driving in the car, listening on radio. The match was against Jimmy Connors. And when I realized he was going to win, I stopped the car, turned the radio full blast, and I was running around that car just. Thank you, Lisa.
I'm thrilled listening to the story about it. I can't even imagine how thrilled you must have been. That must have been awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great moment.
Wow. Now, tell me about who brought you in. I didn't recognize when I read the company that you originally joined from for direct sales. I didn't actually recognize the company name. Is that because that company is not in business now?
That's correct.
Okay.
The wall is overcome and business for a while. I actually ran the offshoot of that company for a while. I ended up having one of the largest organizations at that time. So I actually built a business from ground up. That's why I was always so familiar with the things that any representative would do. I understood what success looked like. I also understood what fear looked like. And in the very beginning, I, like everyone else who comes into this business, probably had a lot of fear. To answer the question specifically, I was introduced to the business by an individual who was a full-time school teacher driving a public transportation bus in the city of Chicago part-time to take care of his family. But he always had a vision to do so much more. And he never felt that he was utilizing his time effectively enough. So he was the type of person that was always looking for something else that he might do. He found direct selling through a company at that time by the name of Bestline Products. And a lot of good people came out of that company, by the way. You're familiar with Jim Rohn.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Rohn came out of that company. Oh. You may have heard of Larry Thompson, co-founder of Herbalife with Mark Hughes. Larry Thompson came out of this same company that we're talking about. And so did Rudy Reback, Jerry Brassfield. If you remember the March issue of Direct Selling News, which honored legends who had been working with direct selling for 50 years or more, 4 of us on that cover came out of Bestline Products.
Wow.
So It was a company that was very exciting at that moment in time. I knew nothing about direct selling. Had I not had a very good sponsor, I never would have given it an ounce of time. All I wanted to be was an architect. I was working in one of the more well-known architectural firms of that time, Mies van der Rohe and Associates. And so I couldn't believe that a school teacher would be so excited about direct selling. And it was because he was so authentic that I paid attention, went to a few meetings, said no, I don't know how many times. He kept coming back. John, you got to take a look. You got to just, participate with us in this. And then I thought it was for Joyce. Joyce is my wife, by the way. I thought it was for her, not for me. And I thought, if she did this and did well and earned any money, I would help her manage the money. And that's how naive this guy was at that time, Lisa. And one thing led to another. I got more involved. I started doing home parties. Primary product line happened to be a line of cleaning products. At the party, I used to demonstrate one of the all-purpose cleaners, and I would squirt it in my mouth because it was safe to have around kids. And that's how I got started. And then after getting started, I met a lot of wonderful people, all walks of life, and I realized that it was possibly something special. So I wasn't a quick start. I wasn't a fast start, whatever you want to call it. It took time for it to sink in. It took time for me to shed my ego. It took time for me to understand that this could be a business if done properly. And I grew up in an environment where there were a lot of people who probably did not do it properly. They were too interested in the money, what could be earned, and I always had to work very hard. So the money, I used to listen to conversations about what success might look like. I probably believed 2%. And what I did believe in happened to be the products. And I believed in the channel of distribution where people from all walks of life could participate and be the connector. Today, because of the way I write, the research that I do, I would call the direct seller the intermediary between a company that offers products and services and consumers that need those products and services. So I understood a little bit of that at the time. And Joyce and I built a business based on customer acquisition and retention. And then the other piece started to kick in where we found that other people were interested in doing what we were doing. And we were only earning a few $100s a month, but that can be very exciting when the money runs out before the month runs out.
Right.
And that's the state we were in back then. So thanks for asking the question. I hope that gave you some sense of how I got started.
Oh, no, absolutely. And you and I don't know if you remember this. You deal with so many people. I'm wondering if you remember any of these interactions, but you and I wouldn't say bump heads, but we didn't necessarily agree. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. You were much more towards the talk to people that you meet locally that you already know or that you run into at the store. And I was more marketing, advertising, because I didn't know a lot of people. I didn't have like the warm market to start with. And I think at the beginning, it wasn't a mesh as much as it is today. Do you still feel like it's better to build it both ways, or it's better just to build it with your warm market and work up from there? How do you feel about that today?
No, I think you bring up an interesting question, and the answer is not an answer, it's just perspective. I always felt that you start with a warm market because it is a warm market, and you can probably communicate with the warm market easier by just being yourself. When you reach out and begin to do what you did, for some people that have that skill, that are able to do it, and you certainly did it so well, that's the way to go. So I don't think there's an answer. You probably perceive me as being an advocate, talk to people. In fact, I call it the power of three. Talk to
Yes.
at least three people per day.
Yeah.
One in the
Yeah.
morning, one around noontime, rest up, but before the sun goes down, talk to the third person. That was a technique. It was a tactic. It was something that I felt I could teach to more people. If I could have found 1,000 Lisa Wilbers, let me tell you. But what you have done and the way you present it now, you make it so much easier for a person to understand how to use tools and how to maintain your authenticity, which I think is wonderful because, as you know, tools such as this were not available to us
Right.
that many years ago. So we did it entirely differently. If you can't use these tools today in an authentic manner, I don't think your chances of succeeding are that great. Uh,
Oh, I
Even if
agree.
your goals are minimal and you just want to do it locally, the beautiful thing about being able to adopt much of what you did and even more, and to use tools like this, is that you have no limitations. So you can scale the business a lot more effectively than you could many years ago.
It's funny. I didn't realize that the sign on the car thing was unusual at the time. A lot of the stuff that I did, I didn't know it wasn't done in direct sales at the time. All I did was I'm thinking, how am I going to get a bunch of people know what I do? And I saw where I saw the car done the first time, the very first time the wrap was in Las Vegas on a trip. Coca-Cola had a PT Cruiser wrapped. And I had a PT Cruiser, and I'm thinking, oh man, this would look great with with lipstick all over it. So I went home. I mostly look at what other companies do. I don't think of it as a direct sales problem. I guess that's to my benefit that I don't think of it as a direct sales issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
I
that's
just
the brilliance in what you did.
Yeah, and it wasn't on purpose. It was of course, that's the great way, huh? Stumble on. It was a stumble on. Oh.
But see, you could do creative things, innovative things. Those are the descriptors that we would use today. Your creativity, your innovation was on a scale of 1 to 10, up there around 10,
Oh.
many, many years ago. But see, you could do those things, and you always did exactly what you're doing right now. And that is, you'd have this big, glowing smile. So if someone thought it was crazy, if they met you, all of a sudden, wow, this is really unique.
It doesn't seem so crazy.
Right.
I was talking with Angie about this. I had no idea when leadership first came out. We were the last to get it on the East Coast. You guys pioneered it on the West Coast, and then they slowly opened it up. So we didn't have it at first. And when I made, actually, I decided early on that I wasn't going to decide whether I liked it or not until I made senior executive, which is the top of the pay plan. And luckily, that's what I decided. So when I made it, I didn't know there weren't a whole bunch. I thought there were a whole bunch of seniors, and you guys just weren't telling me who they were. And I thought, well, now that I made it, I'll get to meet them all. And there was a couple, and Vondell. And I didn't actually get to meet Vondell, I think, for a few years after that, because we didn't always used to get together. So this has
Now,
been
you
a
know,
ride.
Blondell is a unique story because she saw it the way you saw it. you wanted to get to that top position. So I had the opportunity to personally introduce Vondell to the business because I knew her from other direct selling companies. She came out of that Best Line Products experience. So that's another individual
Oh, awesome.
that started there. When I showed Vondell and Terry how it was going to work in Avon, and we only had 3 levels of achievement, if you can remember. Very simple, very easy to understand. You could do it on a napkin. Unit leader, advanced unit leader, executive unit leader, and then we added senior executive unit leader when we saw that some of you were getting close to being exec or could be an exec. As soon as Vondell saw senior, she said, that's where I want to be. And of course, she ended up being the first of the seniors, and then you and Peter and a few other people came along. But it always has been, and I assume it remains, a very elite group. So kudos to you for seeing the vision in the very beginning, because that set the tone for the company. Were it not for people like you who saw the vision, we wouldn't have been able to attract people to just be involved and become unit leaders in advance. Everybody didn't want to become a senior, nor did they need to become a senior. But to know that there were people like you there who had made that trip, that was awesome.
I still have trouble realizing that not everybody wants to do that. Yeah, I assume everybody does, and I shouldn't do that. Some people do just want 300 to 500 extra a month, and they don't necessarily want to rule the world.
Most people, most people,
Right.
80 to 85% would be totally amazed, excited, not to mention it could be life-changing with 300 to 500 per month. And what we know from the research we did when writing the book that I wrote, 85% would be really happy with 500 to 1,500 per month. Only 10% ever earned $2,000 a month or more.
Wow. And that's see, to me, I'm glad I didn't know that. I'm
Yeah.
glad that I didn't know that. You know, I'll tell you a little funny story, but then I want to go talk about the book, because the research in there is going to help us today with
Okay.
everything we're doing. The little story is there've been a couple of changes in ownership, of course, in Avon US that you are aware of, I'm sure. And they changed the name of the top of the pay plan to Platinum. And when the Platinum executive leader, when that first came out, of course, we all wanted to be Platinum, and Vondell included. We couldn't wait to make sure we were back where we deserved to be, according to us, right? So I was plotting and planning to make sure that I was going to get the title. So 2 campaigns in a row, which the campaigns are 2 weeks still, I missed it by a little amount. So when I did make it, I put up a little cartoon being funny with a cape on me, a little cartoon me. And I called myself, I said, just call me Captain Platinum. Call me. And what's funny is that stuck.
Great.
Even though I'm not number 1, I'm number 5, but people do call me Captain Platinum. I wonder how the other 4 feel about that, that self-designated title of Captain Platinum. That's what the little cartoon is up in the corner where you are. It says Captain Platinum.
Well, that's what I call branding.
Yeah. And
And
I went with it because it got to be, people were saying it being funny. And then I realized it was sticking to the point where when I went to a corporate event, they were introducing me as Captain Platinum.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I call that branding, and you've always been very good at that. It's part of your personal marketing expertise. But yeah, you'll remember in the days of Avon West, Wild Wild West, all of that, from my point of view, was a part of branding within a brand. We wanted to promote the brand, Avon, but I also wanted to focus on team building and getting everyone involved in a brand that they could identify with. So taking the boring label of Avon West, and we were Avon West, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast. I thought those labels were rather boring at that time. So when we adopted the theme song from the movie Wild Wild West, it was intentional. It was attempting to build a brand within the brand that would make it fun, exciting. So when you do things like call yourself Captain Platinum, I call it branding, and you're adding fun to the whole idea of being in a position. So I applaud that. I always thought that that kind of innovation and creativity would be good for everyone. And I still believe that today. So,
And you got huge results with your Wild Wild West campaign, or however you want to put that branding. You got huge results for that. I was reading that last night too.
oh
It was
yeah,
like 6 years of huge results, right?
yeah. I think it was 1999. The movie came out, Wild Wild West. Will Smith was the star. Once I saw the movie, I became fascinated with the music. And the next meeting that we had, we call them staff meetings, and the division managers would come in once a month, and then they would have meetings with district managers, and then district managers would have meetings every week or every two weeks, I forget, with their Avon representatives. Once I heard that song, I knew that we had our theme song. And every meeting, we might play some other music, but when we switched to Wild Wild West, people got it was exciting. And
Well,
we
we
took that to the
all
highest
of us,
level.
the rest of the country wanted to be in the West.
Well, I always hoped it was good for everyone. We certainly had a lot of fun with it. And I know some people got tired of it, but in the end, I hope everybody had fun with it, whether you were with us or whether you were saying, we've got to outperform that Wild Wild West group. That was the whole idea, performance.
I think that's what Angie was like.
Yeah.
He's a competitive guy. He wanted me to tell you, by the way, because he knows how fond you are of having notes ahead and the teleprompter. He wanted me to tell you that he got all that stuff from me and you didn't. Which is totally not true, but he wanted me to tell you that.
Well, I think I looked at most of it, that interview you did with Angie, and it was so refreshing. It took me back into some days that I have so many fond memories, and I enjoyed so much working with Angie because he was the coach. He was a class act. He did so many wonderful things. Everyone respected Angie. We had some great moments during those times. And when I think back, Tom, Maria, Angie, Brian, myself, and I actually went into Avon because of Rick Goins, who had become a friend through the Direct Selling Association. But you talk about special leadership. It tied into why I felt that it was the place that I wanted to be at that point in my life. Because I had read books about how Steve Jobs built his business and how others had done the same. I was a big Jack Welch fan at one time, read a lot of books on how he had built his business. And then lo and behold, at Avon, we experienced some special times the same way. So we should never, ever forget. And I'm so glad that you reached out to old timers like Angie and myself to bring us on your show.
And we've had a lot, of course, comings and goings and ups and downs, but I think you would be stunned at how many of the people you remember as representatives are still uh, in the fight.
I
We're
think,
still in the fight. Yeah, I think you'd be stunned how many that you recognize.
well, I know and I've heard, and I think that all of you together represent the glue. So, yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
said
wonderful.
that before and I don't mean this in a bad way, but the people that work at the corporate jobs do tend to move around much more than we do. So if there's a constant in the direct sales universe, I think it's us.
I
But
agree.
now tell me about the project. How did you get excited about the whole idea of is it the word gig is new, but the actual concept is as old as direct sales, right? Having the side hustle that's earning money. How did you get interested in that to write a book about it?
Well, as you know, when I left Avon, I stayed involved in direct selling by accepting the role of publisher editor in chief of Direct Selling News. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work with many outstanding writers who would go out and find the stories that needed to be told. And we always wanted to tell those stories as authentically as possible. We didn't want to just promote direct selling. We wanted to share stories about good things going on within the direct selling community. So I left Direct Selling News about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I had decided at that time that it was time for me to really focus more on some of the things that I wanted to do. Research was one thing I always wanted to do more of. And I also consider myself an observer, and I started to observe the gig economy growing at about 3 times the rate of the normal economy, attracting people from all walks of life to part-time work, which, as you know, is not new. But something else was going on. And I wanted to find out what's really going on here, because when I started to do the initial research, I was looking for basic stats and facts. So you take one stat in particular that got my attention. About 57 million Americans were involved. I go, wow, I'm familiar with direct selling, and we only have 5 or 6 million. And most of those are part-time, not full-time, less than a million full-time. And then I look at the economic impact, and there are so many different sources, including the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, but I'm looking at economic impact of over $1 trillion in the US alone. And I'm going, whoa.
Wow.
And then, of course, names started to emerge that became very popular: Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, DoorDash, Etsy, Shopify. You know, all of these are new labels, new brands that identify with the gig economy. So I had been jumping in a lot of Ubers, okay, being transported from one place to another. I have interviewed well over 200 Uber drivers. It's probably closer to 300. And so I wanted to know, why are you doing this? And, you know, I personally never got a negative response. And I'll tell you why. It's very logical. But people were talking about flexibility. I do it when I want to. I go to work when I want to. In fact, it's as simple as picking up my phone, turning it on. When I want to stop work, I turn the phone off. I go back home. I use my own car. And I started thinking about all of this. Uber doesn't own any cars.
No.
The people own the cars. Taxi cabs are being disrupted. And the
Yeah.
same goes for Airbnb. Airbnb hosts, you know, probably more people than hotel chains, at least pre-pandemic. And Airbnb doesn't own any real estate.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the fact that people from all walks of life are stepping into these new roles, and now they are able to really exercise flexibility and freedom in how they work. So I started to realize that the gig economy was new because it was representing new choices where people could turn underutilized time or underutilized assets into an income earning opportunity. Now, that's a little bit different than the way we typically think of it when we're just talking about direct selling. The same definition applies to direct selling. But now we have so many other choices as a result of technology, and the choices were multiplying exponentially, whereas people can now choose how and when they want to work from home, or even work from phone. So so this to me was very different, and I decided I want to do more research, and I read more during that period, the initial phase of creating the Ultimate Gig Project, than I had done at any other time in my life. I just started reading research paper after research paper. I started Googling gig economy, and I see why it's called an economy, because it's having such an economic impact. And then when you look at what's happening on the global scene, it's happening in mature markets all over the world. And then in one of the research papers I found, the chair of the International Monetary Fund started to talk about the significance of informal work, where more and more people, regardless of age, past experience, or inexperience, I always use that vernacular. But now it's really true that in the gig economy, you can find something that can help you to activate a passion that you can do without concern about age, past experience, or inexperience. And you can work from home and also possibly work from phone. So, what started as an idea that I wanted to learn more turned into a real project. And along the way, about 1 year into it, I made the decision that I was going to write a book and commit to all of what's necessary to do a book the right way. And then a few of my academic friends, especially Dr. Robert A. Peterson over at the University of Texas, convinced me that we needed to do empirical research, whereas we had our own data. And we did that. And it's probably some of the most up-to-date data that's in the book that has been conducted on the gig economy in the last couple of years. So you mentioned the data, and evidently that's something that maybe got a little bit of your. The book has chapters, and those chapters in a book. But I made the effort to lay out the flow of the book in a logical, sequential manner, whereas we could help people make more sense of the gig economy. And because I'm such an advocate of direct selling, as you know, there's one chapter on direct selling to help people better understand it from a different perspective, not just hearing that, well, you should take a look at direct selling because the products are great, the company is great, blah, 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 blah. There's a bigger reason now for taking a look at that subset of the gig economy because it is so very unique. And the one thing that you've done over the years, you have aggregated a customer base. And between you and your mother, you probably keep track of a lot of people. Now, in the gig economy, most of the opportunities don't necessarily allow you to aggregate and benefit from a customer base that you can retain. So it's one of the biggest assets that direct sellers have. And I hope that people listening to your show are kind of reminded of their tremendous asset, because if you love the products and you're passionate about them, which I know you are, because, and I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about everyone listening now, then you have the ability to share with others what someone shared with you at one point in time and aggregate that into an accumulation of customers that continue to want to engage in your brand because of you. And that's why I think what you do, Lisa, is so unique, because you have built a brand within the brand. So many of the people that continue to buy from Avon, they're really buying because of you and your mother. They want to continue to be affiliated with you because you make it exciting. So that's why in the book we have a chapter devoted to direct selling, but there are 12 chapters all total. So most of all, when it comes to the book, I hope that we help a lot of people make better sense of the gig economy.
Well, I think we as direct sellers need to buy the book and take on board the differences and the likenesses so that we know what's out there, and that way we know what to tell them our differences. You know what I mean? So and the thing is, do you think that this helps the people that are getting in that want to like be platinums, want to be at the top of the pay plan? Or do you think companies are catering more to the ones that want to do 3 to 500? Do you,
I don't
you know
think
what I
it's a
mean?
matter of catering. I think it's a matter of marketing sense. When the stats and facts show us that 85% of the people are interested in reasonable incremental income, we need to go there if we want to grow within the marketplace.
It does feel
Yeah.
like companies have shifted towards that more than focusing on top people, which is
Well,
it's good still. Good for the top people still, because my team is made up from people that don't necessarily want to be platinums. You
but
know what I mean?
top people grow when they understand the need to help other people grow. What we become is a result of how effective we are in helping other people. So the masses are not necessarily interested in the top position, but I will say that as long as you make it known that it's available to anyone and everyone, you're doing your job. And as you continue to work with people, you will better understand who wants that motivation to be able to duplicate themselves more effectively. Now, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this on behalf of all direct selling companies. You are seeing a shift in focus on customer acquisition and retention because it's foundational to everyone's business. No one is going to stay around long enough to succeed if they don't have a foundation of
The
customers.
products, right?
Yes.
And
And you did
that's all
that.
been because of the FTC scrutiny,
Yes.
correct? Yes.
And it makes sense because if
Yeah.
you only talk about the top, chances are you can be perceived as misrepresenting what your
Right.
business is all about. I remember when you and Vondell were in um, McConnell Club and above. President's Council meant that you had to sell personally between you and your helpers about $75,000 to $100,000 worth of
Yeah.
product per year.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah. I
so
remember
when I talk to people about you legends, I remind people that I know how they started and I know what they
that.
built. And the reason why their foundation is solid as a rock is because they led by example. Now, that goes for you, Vondell. It goes for Peter. It goes for Bernadette. It goes for Dan Mundy. It goes for so many other people that built solid foundations. So here's what I'm going to say. And I have been around a long time now. Don't get too fancy with the compensation plan. And
Right.
don't get too fancy with labels and titles.
Right.
Keep
Right.
it simple because simplicity is a strategy.
And that's been your mantra for years and years. Go back to simple. And that makes so much sense, though. Don't worry, I'm still a decent sized seller, because in my opinion, I can't not do that and face my downline and try to teach them to sell. They'll say, you want me to make President's Council? Have you ever done it? You know, they're like kids. They're not gonna do something I haven't done. So I continue to be a decent sized seller because they're not going to listen to anything I say if I'm not.
It's called leadership by example.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've always had that. And is that from your architect background, where you like to simplify things to get the job done?
I really think so because I bought into the philosophy of Mies van der Rohe because it fit me. And I wasn't always the best at doing the freehand sketch of the building, but I knew how to put that building together. And that to me was the big learning from architectural school. Mies van der Rohe had a philosophy that was very simple, 3 words. And he used to always say this: less is more. Now, when you take that to heart, it means don't overload the building with widgets and gimmicks. Don't overload the facade. Mies van der Rohe is one of the first architects to leave steel and glass totally exposed, no ornamentation on his buildings. It's a philosophy, and it stuck with me, and I still use those words today. Less is more. Out of that, I developed other phrases that I like to use. Complexity can always be reduced to simplicity. Simplicity is a strategy. And then when it comes to work in the business, people used to laugh at me, and I developed a button called that the button had on it the power of 3. And I used to say there are 3 things to learn: sell and service customers, share with others what someone shared with you, show others how to do what you have learned to do. Now, we can talk about that for 2 hours, or we can talk about it for less than a minute. Okay. The choice is yours. You know, I've done the 3-hour seminar. I know how to do that. Okay. But in the end, it's how consistent can you be with keeping it simple, because simplicity also activates duplicability. Now, that might not be the correct pronunciation of the word, but it allows us to duplicate. So if you talk to 3 people per day, if you reach out to 3 people per day using your social tools, you know, and this seems hilarious now because you can reach out to 30, 40, 10, 20. And I used to teach, you know, just reach out to 3.
Right.
Morning, noon, and before the sun goes down. Now, if you do that 5 days a week, that's 15. If you do it 2 weeks, that's 30. If you do it 3 weeks, that's 45. If you do it 4 weeks, that's 60. And what I used to do at the end of that exercise, Lisa, and you probably heard this before, I would sincerely say to a person that I don't think that you can talk about something this good 3 times a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 60 people, and not have enough say yes who will warm your heart.
Right.
Not to mention build your business.
Right.
But
No,
do
that's
it every
true.
day, or at least 5 days a week. Take
Yeah.
2 days off, you know,
It's
but
the
do that.
consistency. Yeah, it's the consistency. I think that's hard for people to really execute.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you use the right word. Execution is a strategy.
Yeah. You know, it was funny. Rick Owens was the president of Avon US on the first trip that I went on. I was looking through a video they gave us back then, a VHS video, and he was doing the announcements on stage. That's when I first dreamed about wanting to go on the stage, when that video of him came up. And I remember on that trip, he came up to our table and I couldn't speak because I was like so taken with him coming over to the table and talking with us. It was so funny, but I the I think the whole thing of it is that people want to be part of something and you want to make it simple. So I like what you always had. Do you remember the booklet that you have? I bet you had something to do with that. The little presentation booklet, Vondel was in it, that we first used to use, and it maybe had 4 pages, I think. Very short and simple. Told the history of the company, showed Vondel and Terry, and then had the compensation plan. And it was very simple and short. So that's the whole bottom line of this, is that keep it simple.
Yeah, I like it. And you know, some of you all used to put KISS on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
You know, keep it simple. I think that still has a lot of value. So yeah, I still believe that way. I haven't changed too much. I've adapted, but I haven't changed in terms of basic philosophical beliefs about micro enterprise in particular. I just think it's so fascinating.
You know what's funny? Another memory I had I wanted to share with you. This was from a Dallas meeting, I believe, or it could have been California, but we were out there and we were a few years in, and I was earning decent money, but your talk was about leaving a legacy. And what's funny is at the time, I was still living in the single wide in the trailer park. And I'm thinking to myself, legacy. I just want to be able to start my car without pushing it. And it was many years before that really was relevant to me, but you know what? It did stick with me. And would you speak on that for a moment?
Yeah,
Leaving a legacy.
I think it's so important. And having been an observer of the direct selling model for so many years, and now being so focused on better understanding the gig economy and then transmitting that understanding to people, I think legacy is the secret sauce. I don't think money is. I think money is a result. It's not the cause. And if you focus on trying to convince people that they can, and here's a word that I never use, you hear people say, you can make money. I say no. The only people who can make money are running the presses in Washington, D.C. They work for the government. They make money. The rest of us have to earn it. And it is the result of our effectiveness in what we do. And so I really believe that. And that's why I always found the stories behind the big story. I would give Bill Singleton credit for this, for his inquisitive nature. We worked together in the very beginning so very well. And somehow we decided that we wanted to take a look at the archives. And one of the first came on archives that we thought would be very valuable was the David McConnell story of Avon that he wrote many years ago. And he talked about concepts, he talked about philosophy, he talked about principles, he talked about values. He talked about legacy in a way. He talked about, women doing things that had never, ever been done before. So fast forward to my time with Avon, I always got that from Rick Goins. In the very beginning, I think Rick was about changing the narrative, writing the next chapter of this grand old lady story, the Avon story. We had to contemporize her. We had to adjust. And it was like adjusting a battleship, if you will. It had to be handled very delicately. When I took that back to the teams that I had the privilege and honor of working with, I used to always talk about legacy, and I used to always talk about us having the privilege of being the new torchbearers of this great story, this great legacy of Avon. And so I wanted people to feel that we were privileged to be here to work on whatever it is or whatever it was that we were working on. When we received our performance goals at the beginning of each year, I wanted to turn those goals into themes. I did not want people working to achieve numbers. I thought that was so impersonal. But if we had a reason for hitting the numbers and exceeding the numbers happen to be the metric. But the bigger cause here had to be something related to our contribution to the legacy of the company. So I think legacy is very important. I appreciate you for just mentioning something I said in a meeting that long ago, because I tried to do it in every meeting. If I talked too much about tactics, I felt I was off base. If I could blend tactics and performance goals into a conversation about legacy principles, values, then I slept better at night. So that's just the way we approached it at that time. I know some things changed, so maybe that changed a bit. But you have built a legacy.
Well, thank you, because all I really want to do was stay true to myself and set an example on how you can be self-supporting. That's my big thing. Is my whole life goal is I want people to be self-supporting, to support themselves. 100% responsibility. That's my flag. I fly.
I think it comes through loud and clear. That's why I said in the beginning, I feel privileged that you invited me to join you for this chat.
I wish you lived closer. I'm having a big giant party on Saturday. The company had an incentive where if you're Diamond Club, which is $1 million in sales or more in a year, they gave you a big chunk of money to have they said to do whatever for your team. I decided to have a pig roast in my backyard.
Wow.
I'm expecting about 150 people.
Wow.
So we have a pig roast with a DJ, and we have all kind of stuff planned. So it should be fun. But we did this once before in 2014, and since we were talking about all these years later, I decided we need to do it again. But it's going to be fun, I think. And this
Great.
time we get to live stream a bunch of it. See, that's what's the difference is. We're going to do, yeah, it's going to be fun. Now, tell everybody, someone asked, what version is the book in? Is it hardcover or is it paperback? And you can do Kindle. I know that because I ordered the Kindle already.
Yeah, you can order a Kindle version, but the book it's in hardback.
Okay.
And it's published by Emerald Publishing out of the UK. It's available via Amazon. That's the easiest, quickest way. So go to Amazon bookstore, search Ultimate Gig, and you'll find the book. Now, when you go to our website, and Lisa, you've been so kind to run the website address across your screen, ultimategigresources.com will give you highlights of the book, also a quick link to Amazon or Emerald Publishing. And you'll also see Ultimate Gig Resources. Now, Ultimate Gig Resources is about the author, in this case, me, and the team, sharing with readers more of the tools that we created along the way in writing the book. So it's a separate access pass. You do pay a modest fee to get into it, but it's a one-time fee. And it gives you presentations that I have used. It also will introduce you to the magazine that we first put out. It's 50-some pages in digital format. You'll also see insights. You'll get our newsletter, and you'll also get access to some of the research papers that we will be adding to Ultimate Gig Resources. Once you have access, you always have access. So that's how you get the book. I do feel that it will build confidence and pride in the selections that people have already made, whatever they may be. And I know most of your audience would be already in direct selling. I think that chapter is going to build pride. I think that between the book and resources, you'll be very proud of being a micro entrepreneur.
Well, that's awesome. So I already got the book, and now I'm going to have to go on Ultimate Gig Resources and subscribe
Okay,
because I want to make sure I have all the information. That's awesome.
great.
Well, John, thank you so much. I can't believe an hour went by already. I really appreciate it. You have such huge credentials. I am so honored that you took the time to spend with us today. Thank you so much. I have one last question. Everybody gets this question. What is your favorite? Is it brownies, cookies, or sea salt caramels?
Cookies.
Cookies. Cookies it is. I always send my guests some cookies with their thank you note, so expect some cookies. And if you'll stay right there for a moment, we'll go back to the green room and I'll stop the broadcast for everybody. And this will be up on YouTube shortly. So thank you very much, John.